We're talking to Mr. EJordan, the president and CEO of the organization Partners in the Struggle. And with, of course, Mr. Jordan is Reverend Stevenson, who is the pastor of St. Luke Primitive Baptist Church. And of course, Reverend Stevenson, I think before we had our first commercial break, we were talking about some of the causes for some of this violence. Let's have you to start us off and talk about some of the things that you believe to be the cause of this violence, and of course, Mr. Jordan will pick up after that.
Yeah, when we look at violence, we certainly know that, particularly in our communities, that we can't look at it in a silo. There are a lot of contributing factors. And so the other piece of it is that you have to look at the great disparity in our communities as it relates to violence. A young African-American male is 33 more times likely to die from gun violence than a white female. And so that's astounding when you look at the bar. And the bar for the young African-American male is here, and for everyone else is pretty low. And so there are a lot of contributing factors. And then you look at who is committing these crimes and why they're committing the crimes. And at the helm of a lot of it is there's a sense of hopelessness. And when you don't care about yourself, you really don't care about others.
That's right.
And so when people reach this stage of hopelessness, it's almost a stage of suicidalness where I don't care about myself, I don't care about living, and I certainly can't value your life if I don't value my life. And so all of these contributing factors of hopelessness in our community where we're not valuing life. And so we need to speak to all of these things: education, opportunities. You've got individuals, and I know particularly at my church, you got young men who are in their 30s and who are fathers and who are trying to raise their families, but when they were 19 years old, they got a felony from selling drugs or something and have been locked out of society for the last 13, 14 years of their life. And so if they're not strong enough to not give up and to continue to push and create opportunities even when doors are shut, then it's very easily to go back to what got you into that predicament in the first place. And so we have to look at all of these opportunities. And one of the things I like about what Earl has been doing is that he has been right there on the battlefield. It's not until you've looked into the eyes of a mother who has buried her child for no reason at all, oftentimes over nothing, that says that we are at a state of emergency. We can no longer sit back and pretend as if though it is not happening simply because it hadn't knocked on our door. We all have to come together as a community and talk about ways to eliminate, decrease this violence in our community.
And of course, I guess, Brother Jordan, you'll say if it hasn't knocked on your door yet, it will if it continues as we're going. Speak to that.
Echoing what Pastor Stevenson is saying, my level of knowledge right now is everything that he said is right on versus our children who are committing these crimes that may not have getting enough love or not getting no spiritualness in their life. I look at that, and as I said earlier, a lot of our kids out here, they are lost. They don't know exactly where they can go if they do get into some type of trouble. And it's so easy to get in trouble, it's hard to get out of this trouble that you get in. And so now going into my 10th year with Partners in the Struggle, I've seen so much. I've seen these young kids who don't have the focus of trying to get out of this small box. And what we want to do right now is to let them know that, basically with Frank, Pastor Stevenson, at the church where we're in South Nashville, that God loves you. And we're going to pray it out that you can do something other than being a killer or being a drug dealer or going out and committing these serious crimes that's going to take away from your family for the rest of your life. So it's a lot of attributes that goes on with the gun violence. We have a lot of illegal guns that are in our community, in the black community, that no one wants to address. These are the kids who have no hope, and then if someone puts a gun in their hand or puts some drugs in their hand, if you ain't got none, this is easy to get. My stomach is grumbling. I need some food, so you're going to go out here and get your hustle on. So it's a lot of things that's going on, but right now, I know God has put me and Frank together, and we're going to make it happen, not just in South Nashville. We're going to go abroad. We're going to do this thing on a national level where we can try to make people understand that you don't have to take a life. You don't have to pick up this gun and commit this seriousness in your life that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. So we're going to make it happen, and I just think with everyone's help and everyone doing what we're supposed to do as far as looking at the problem, looking at coming together and raising our children the way we was raised when I was growing up in the 70s, you know, as a community, you know, so I think we're going to get back to that.
Reverend Stevenson, when you look at your congregation and the young people, do you have many young people in your congregation that you can use to somehow reach these other young people? I mean, what seems to be the problem with most of their attitudes toward churches and whatever?
Absolutely. You know, I think, Dr. Haney, that it's not coincidental that God has allowed me to pastor at this church, which is 2 blocks down the street from where I grew up in University Courts. And matter of fact, I was one of those bad little boys, you know, over in that area. That church was there when I was a little boy. I can admit this now. I think the statute of limitation is over with, but I think I threw one of the rocks and bust out one of the windows in the early 80s. We threw quite a bit of rocks, but you know, I was one of those young men in that area, in that neighborhood, who needed to understand that there were other avenues. And so some of those young people in that community, that's all they've ever seen is violence. That's all they've seen is if somebody hits you, you hit them back and you do whatever it takes to win. And at a young age, I saw people die. You know, I was 9 years old when I saw a guy get shot in the head, and I jumped off my bicycle and ran, but my bicycle fell next to his body. And when the police were there, they wouldn't let me get my bike out of the yellow tape. You see? So I mean, I saw this, and so many of our other children have seen this type of violence in our community. And so we have to, first of all, give them hope and let them understand that there are opportunities, and show them that there are opportunities. And so each one of us have a responsibility for reaching the other. So I do use youth in my church to talk to the other youth who may be involved in gangs or what have you, and they come and they share and they have open dialogue so that they can move forward and move past some of the issues and some of the things they're dealing with.
Brother Jordan, you know, we've got about 30 seconds before we have our second commercial break, but when we come back, I want you and Brother Stevenson to think in terms of how this national ceasefire against gun violence is organized, and some of the things that other folks might be able to do in order to help the two of you spread the word in a greater sense of this as a national organization, because it's a national problem. And I think the only way that it can be settled is through national effort. And of course, let me take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with you following this very, very short break. We talked to Mr. EJordan.